You know, I felt like Kang watching that episode. I kind of knew it was going to happen because I've read the timeline comics, but yet I also didn't totally know because we're off on a new branch, the MCU. And it was just so exciting. This was one of those where were you when you watched it episodes. This is, I think, like some of the best content, period, that the MCU has ever put out. I think it was Endgame level. I would say that so far. I would say that Loki, a very long MCU movie, and Endgame are probably tied as my favorite Marvel movies because stuff happened. Stuff went down. Choices were made. Bold choices were made. And you know I'm a fan of bold choices. Jonathan Majors. Wow, what a performance. I told you he was something special. I've been saying that since he first showed up on a movie screen back in Hostiles. And he was just fantastic here. So good. I didn't think I was going to have a lot of screen grabs because it's mostly talking, but I took so many screen grabs of his facial expressions because it was just so much, it was such a joy to watch. He is going to be a fabulous character. You know, during the episode, Kang has a line, well, it's actually Immortus. I'll explain it to you, but it's the Immortus version of Kang from the comics, basically. I'm going to call him Immortus. Well, let's just call him Kang. All right, so anyway, because we're calling them all Lokis, basically. But Kang says, we're all villains here. And I was like, oh yeah, you are all villains. But they're all just so likable. Although as someone who always, of course, gravitates towards the Sith, I guess that's why I enjoy this so much. And I thought it really was like a Disney Marvel villains show, Loki, which is delightful. So we didn't get Ralph Bohnerd, and it was glorious. A lot of you thought that we were going to, but I didn't think so. And I've been saying that, and a lot of you felt that I was setting myself up for disappointment. But the thing is that there were just too many legit clues for Kang's arrival that for him to at least not be name checked. But oh, he was home. So great. And he had one of the greatest deathbed lines I've ever seen. And I didn't even realize its nuances till I watched it again to do this episode breakdown. And he says, see you soon, with a smile on his face. And then he winks. Oh, wow. It was so great. And we were like, I can't wait. Now, Kevin Feige has said, you know, he's made a point of saying that you don't need to watch the Disney Plus shows to follow the movies. But considering that the moment Jonathan Majors was revealed, when that elevator door opened, the entire MCU changed. I mean, this is an event that will directly lead to the What If animated series, which I found out from one of my sources is indeed setting up a multiverse that will tie into Doctor Strange 2, Spider-Man No Way Home as well, and Ant-Man and the Wasp 2, Quantumania, which is clearly now, again, as I said last week, clearly going to be a time travel movie, which is very exciting. I don't see how you could not watch this episode to know what's going on. I mean, it's basically an entire episode of exposition. They literally have a meeting. That's so funny. It's the entire setup for the bulk of Phase 4. In fact, so much happened during this single hour that I will be making multiple videos to break it all down. I'm going to be doing this one, which is the episode itself. Then I'm going to do an episode of Who is Kang? Set you all up there. And then my thoughts about Loki Season 2, which we knew was in development, but now has been officially confirmed as greenlit. Hooray! Now, before we break down the episode, let's skip to the ending real quick. Just do the broad strokes, because I know a number of you have some burning questions about what the heck's going on. Well, this is my theory. And it's really, this whole episode is so well written. The callbacks in this series are incredible. And so Loki shows up and he sees Hunter B-15 and Mobius, and he says, someone's coming, someone horrible. Multiple versions of that person are coming. And the great twist is that that person is already here. Oh my gosh, I love it so much. I believe that Kang, who we see revealed, this Kang isn't messing around. This is a more strict ruler of the TVA. He's in his comics accurate outfit. He's not going to hide behind the curtain. A lot of Wizard of Oz references in this whole show, which continued with today's episode. But I think that he's running a more ruthless TVA, because they even reference him. Hunter B-15 says, does he want us to just let them all branch? So I believe that, that's what happens when you're dealing with the time-traveling nemesis. They have all the time in the world. Mere seconds have passed, or minutes have passed for Loki, but this Kang, who we are now facing, who now runs the TVA, has had a lot of time to set it up, and I believe reset everyone. Just like he resets the TVA reset variants in the past to work for them, clearly they've been reset once again. And so I'm very excited to see where that leads to. So that's my theory as to what's happening at the very end of the episode. And don't worry, again, I'm going to do a whole Loki season 2 video. All right, so let's break down this specific episode. Episode 6, for all time, always. Not only the TVA slogan, but also quite romantic. And in the description for the episode, they say that Sylvie and Loki have a date with destiny. I get it, they really did have a date. And then they broke up. Kind of. Oh my gosh, I'm glad there's a Loki season 2. So we start out here with a really amazing opening, which plays the song from Steve and Peggy's dance at the end of Endgame, which I adored. And we hear, I thought first maybe it was all the characters who passed away, but it's just an amalgam of MCU characters. So we have all these iconic lines, some not iconic, but we just love them because we know them all so well. Again, I love how the MCU rewards those of you who will rewatch these movies sometimes once or even more than once a year, all the way through. I think that's fantastic. You really are going through the timeline yourself. So we see, through the opening, we have these lines come in, and then we're seeing the universe, and they start to mix in with Marvel characters, real people too, like Nelson Mandela, Greta Thunberg. How cool is that she showed up in the MCU? I thought that was hilarious. I turned on captions to see exactly who was speaking after I saw some people on Twitter say, "What was Greta Thunberg doing in the MCU?" I was like, all right, who's speaking exactly? There was one line that was muffled, by the way, over the Marvel logo. It said something about time being very powerful, and it was in this deep, booming voice. And I was like, "Is that Kang?" But they didn't even bother to do the closed captioning on that, so I'm not quite sure what was said there. So we're going through, and we see the multiverse, but then we see it streamlined. We see what Immortus or Kang did. And there's his home. It's almost like we're looking at it on Zillow, right? We're like, oh, good location, limbo at the end of time. It's perched right there on that little rock. Looks a lot like the Forge, right? What is it? I forget the name of the realm, right? Where the dwarves live and they forge all the weapons. So Marvel's like, look, we have only so much time and so many computer files. So I like the fact, by the way, that the turret, like the tower in the Citadel, looks like one of the timekeeper batons. I was like, oh wow, that's good branding. It's like a giant timekeeper baton up there. So they go up to the front door, and I thought that this was a great callback to when they were on Lamentus, and they went to that woman's like trailer, and she's like, "Are you going to tell me not to kick the door down?" And I was like, she remembered. Me cute. And he's like, "Look, I don't even know what to say anymore. Do what you got to do." And then she revealed that Loki is in a relationship with a much older woman, because she said, "I was pruned before you even existed." And he's like, "Whoa, crazy." But they don't have to knock because the door opens for them. Isn't that great? Oh, I love it. So they come in, and you see this haunting citadel, castle. I see references to Wizard of Oz. It reminded me a little bit of Beauty and the Beast as well, right? He's also been alone for a very long time, and has personified objects keeping him company, right? The Beast. And also a little Tower of Terror, especially with the elevator theme. I love that ride. Scarlett Johansson's like, yoink, thank you, because she's, of course, producing and hopefully starring in a new movie of that. But I love this. They're walking in, and you see, they really got us with Miss Minutes popping up. And she looks just so evil with her creepy big eyes. It was great. And Miss Minutes, sure enough, Miss Minutes, seems to be sentient AI. Just eat your heart out, Tony Stark, with his AI systems, Jarvis, and then, I forgot the last one, right? So anyway, Miss Minutes pops up, and she's like, "I've come to bargain," right? So she says, "Welcome to the Citadel." And by the way, I got to interview the voice of Miss Minutes, Tara Strong. I hope you'll check that out. That video went up yesterday. She didn't reveal anything, but she gave some great behind-the-scenes stuff about working on this show. So anyway, she says, "You've reached the Citadel at the end of time." Great, we've got a name. And then she said, "He who remains." And when I was watching this live with you guys, I was like, it's Kang. It's going to be Kang. And so I think that probably, a lot of you said you thought that Loki would be in here because we never got to see the King Loki shot. I suspect that maybe they were going to show, maybe Miss Minutes was going to show them the prizes that were available behind certain doors. But maybe they decided to cut that out. Maybe they felt it took a little bit away from the show. because we never got to see that shot. But she does say, hey, you want to rule Midgard? You want to win against the Avengers? You want to kill Thanos instead of him killing you? You want that Infinity Gauntlet for yourself, the throne of Asgard? No problem. And then I felt kind of bad that Sylvie, her offer was just to be happy next to Loki. I was like, come on, I think Sylvie's deserve. I mean, I guess she doesn't really have a lot of goals. And that's true. Loki really, our Loki really thinks big. And then Miss Minute says 2 Lokis on the timeline. It can happen, which means you guys can be together. She knows what at least our Loki really is after. But Sylvie's like, it's just fiction. All of it would be a lie. And Loki's like, that's right. We write our own destiny. Single, not destinies, because he wants them to be intertwined. Our own destiny now. And she's like, good luck with that, and gives him that little evil look. And you're like, you're evil, Miss Minutes. I can't believe it. She's an evil little clock. Time can be quite vicious and unforgiving. Oh, I love it. So she's like, see ya, I gotta go ruin other people's lives. Or is she? I think this is very interesting. She goes to Renslayer, and Renslayer looks at the water, the ring mark that Mobius left on her fine furniture, and she's like, I miss the guy. So Miss Minutes is like, I got your files. I was busy threatening other people. Now time to kind of maybe threaten you. But here's the thing. So Renslayer says, these aren't the files that I asked for. And Miss Minutes says he feels that these will be more helpful to you. What files did she give her? Did Miss Minutes give Renslayer? We don't know where Renslayer goes when she disappears later in this episode. Maybe, Immortus already had a game plan ready for Kang for him to come back, right? We know that Renslayer and Kang are on a collision course in the MCU, and there's even more evidence in this episode. Wait till you see. So I think that's just fascinating. So a seed has definitely been planted here. And Miss Minutes knows it with her little evil. She's like an Iago. She's an evil sidekick. We didn't even realize it. All right, so we're back in the Citadel, and we got some more twisty cameras. I wonder what the Citadel is made of. As you're going to see, it's the same thing that's made out of Immortus' Tempad, Kang Immortus' Tempad. It's beautiful, with these, like this gold running through the black, almost like the timeline itself. It's very, very cool. So they go in here, and there seems to be statues to the timekeepers, and one of them is destroyed. And Loki does the Mary Poppins test. He's like, oh, it's filthy in here. He's like, maybe this person isn't even still alive. And then you hear the elevator ding, and they pull out their swords. I love it that they both, that's the go-to move for Lokis. And they pull out their swords, and the elevator opens, and there's Kang sitting on a bench in his swank elevator. Oh, it's just fantastic. Eating an apple. Almost like the apple of knowledge. Oh, I wonder if that's the reference. There is some religious references here. Oh, that's pretty good. Oh, I love it. And also a little Brad Pitt action from the Ocean's movies where, character always eating gives them a casual, devil-may-care attitude. So that gives Kang that as well. Look how cute he looks sitting there. I believe he's probably wearing things from different time periods. It's very subtle, but it's a very interesting fashion choice. He's just fantastic. He transcends fashion. So I love that they both are like, yeah, we'll stab you. Stabby, stab, stab. He's like, it's adorable. You guys are great. And I love that he says, look at this. He says, two Lokis, two basically of the same person. It's unnatural, but wow. And you're like, it is weird, but we like it too. He's like, I ship it. So he comes out and he's like, come with me, come to my office. So he's like not at all afraid of them, which should be like really freaking them out. And it is, obviously, as you can see. So he's like, I hope I'm not a disappointment. And she's like, if you're just a man, it means you're easier to kill. And of course he can use the Tempad, and look at him. He's just like a little imp. It's like Rumpelstiltskin. It's just so great. So he's like bouncing around, he's laughing at them. And then he just completely leaves the elevator. And then you hear the elevator ding, and then he's waiting for them in his office. And he's like, you guys are adorable. Come on in. Oh, I love it. He spent a lot of time alone, which is great. It gives him that a zany factor. And, Jonathan Majors will be able to play all different types of Kangs. That's the beauty of it. And, while Loki has been played by different actors with his variants, it seems it's all the same with Kang, which I think is an interesting choice. And I wonder if they'll explain that. Because when he does like his little show and tell, it's all the same person. So he serves coffee, and then we go to another office. All these offices, we're going from office to office. So here, Renslayer's getting ready to go, taking some more important files, and Mobius shows up And they have, at first I was like, oh, it's a waste of my time. Get back to Kang or Immortus. But it's important, especially when setting up Loki season 2. So he's like, she's like, are you here to prune me? And he's like, I thought about it, but, considering we're good pals, I'm not going to do that to my good friend. She tries to call him back up, but he's like, hey, the pen. Turns out the pen was Renslayer's secret. So Hunter B-15 gets a chance to be the variant for once. She gets to get chased by the TVA in Fremont, Ohio, 2018, very close to now, at Franklin Delano Roosevelt High School. There's the pens. I can't believe that Renslayer knew who she was. Did she know? Did she peek at her own file? I think that's fascinating. I wonder how she would know that. So anyway, how did they know that? I guess it is on file somewhere. They went to that librarian and they said, you show me all the files and you do it now, or I'm going to talk so loud you're going to get so angry. So this Hunter follows Hunter B-15 into this office, and Hunter B-15's like, just wait. But hold on. Wait and look at the diploma behind her. This says Rebecca Torminate, which is the name, it's an alias for Renslayer from the comics. Oh, wow, it all comes together. This is the alias that Renslayer used after she killed one version of Kang and then goes into hiding in 1903 to spend time with another Kang who at that time was living as Victor Timely. Remember that name? I wouldn't be surprised if it shows up somewhere in the MCU in the near future in relation to Kang, because they're using the aliases. Maybe this version is hiding out right now with a version of Kang. We don't know, because we just see her briefly. So maybe Rebecca Torminate was married to Victor Timely in 2018. I'm very excited to see how this plays out. But anyway, all we need to know for now is that Rebecca comes out and she's just as mean here as she is everywhere. And she's bottom lining it. She's like, what are you doing in my school? And this guy's like, oh my God, everything I know is a lie. So we cut back to this meeting and they're actually sitting in chairs. And so Kang's like, ready for some exposition or Immortus? And we're like, yeah, we're ready. All right, so first, Kang decides to, break them of, they're still a little rascally. And so he's like, let's end this. Because Sylvie's still trying to kill him. And he even says, are we still trying to do this? Come on, let's just stop that. So he takes out a binder, and he's got more papers. I love the way he handles the papers. It's so great. He's just such flair. And he puts them out, and he's like, I know, I have a transcript of even this. You think that you're free, but you still got strings, to borrow an Age of Ultron reference. And I love the way this script is written. So our Loki is Loki 1130, and then he writes me for his lines. He's like, me. And then our other Loki, Sylvie, is 1190. They're pretty close on the numbers there. I wonder what the range is. So they're like, oh man, we thought we were free, but is it just a trick? And he's like, I have everything. This was all my idea. I set the path for you, and you just walked along it. I set this all up for you to come here. I guess maybe it was all a job interview. He doesn't really explain as to why he would do that and why he would set this all up, which is why Sylvie doesn't totally believe it. So we go back to Renslayer and Mobius, and they have a real heart-to-heart, and she's like, you have to have the TVA. The TVA is, it keeps everybody in check. It's order. And Mobius is like, so what's wrong with free will? And this is a great line. Renslayer says the only person who has free will is the person in charge. And that's actually true in real life to some degree. So I thought that was really fascinating. I was like, oh, that cut deep. And so Mobius is like, you changed. And she's like, you changed. We were best pals running the TVA. Everything was going great. Then you decide to settle up, you decide to throw your lot in with a couple of Lokis. And I thought that was a great line too. And I was like, I think Renslayer kind of has a point here. At least in terms of who changed. So Mobius tries to take her out, and it's just embarrassing. He's, clearly never been a hunter. He's just an analyst. Well, not just, but, he doesn't got the moves. So Renslayer easily dispatches him, and I love that he's like, just do it. I got out of the void once before. I guess I'll have to do it again. But you can't do it because they're pals. So they've created enemies of one another here for going forward, but they also still have a friendship. So it's a complex relationship. I love it. So she goes off, and he says, where are you going? And she says, in search of free will, which I think means who's in charge, right? Because she said that's the only person who has free will. Oh, I can't wait. So she goes through the gate, and there's the person in charge. And he's like, hey, I understand your moral objections to what I'm doing. And they're like, what are you so afraid of? Why would you do this? And I love his answer. And he goes, me. I'm afraid of me. And they're like, who are you? And I love that he says a conqueror, which of course, Kang the Conqueror is the name of the character, mostly from the comics. He who remains, which of course is what Miss Minutes called him. And I love that he said a jerk. He's very self-aware. He's like, I know who I am. I thought that was great. I thought that was wonderful. You know, someone who knows who they are and embraces it is also a very dangerous person. It's great. He's like, I'm fun with everything. It's all cool. And you're like, uh-oh. It's just fantastic. So he decides to give them a little history lesson. And this TemPad, again, is made out of the same material as the Citadel. And I think it's kind of creepy the way it flies off as a little blob. I'm like, is it going to possess one of us? But instead, it gives us this great show, and he can mentally control it. And he says, the first me was in the 31st century, which, by the way, is right out of the comics. And just for reference, we're in the 21st century right now. So 10 centuries from now. What is that, like a millennia? Very long time. Now, in the comics, Kang was a descendant of Reed Richards, named Nathaniel Richards. I don't think they're doing that. Some of you have wondered that by race-bending Kang, does that mean they're going to race-bend, Reed Richards? They could, but I think they're really kind of going a little off from the comics here, and I think that's too complex for a Feige. I don't think there's no reason to have the tie to Reed Richards, quite frankly. They don't need it. I mean, there's already a version of Kang that's Iron Lad in the Young Avengers. He just can't be I think it's a little too messy. We're going to have enough fun with all the Kang variants. So I bet they don't do that. So in the 31st century, the first Kang, Alpha Kang, discovered there were other multiverses stacked one on top of each other. And I love that he says, and so we found each other because other versions of me were discovering this at the same time. And they obviously invented all the TVA technology that we've been introduced to during this show. And I like that he said it was a narcissistic, self-congratulatory piece. Oh, you're so smart. And I like that he said, oh, great nose. And I would also add, great smile. Great smile, Kang. And so we were all getting along, and we were developing all this great technology. And you can see all the TVA technology there. They have the time resets, right? So they're putting that all together. But he said some versions of me, some variants weren't so nice, and some of them wanted world domination. And I'm like, that's a gorgeous statue. Who wouldn't want to bring that to life? It's so pretty. He's got the time, timekeepers, staff there. And in the by the way, so okay, I'm getting a little ahead of myself. I'll explain it to you in just a moment. So literally holding the world in the palm of his hand. And so all the Kangs wanted to do that, or at the very least protect their timeline. So a multiversal war broke out, which of course we heard about from Miss Minutes in that little PSA in the very first episode. So basically in the comics, Immortus is the one who decided to try and put some control over all the Kangs. He was the Kang with a conscience. He was the Jiminy Cricket of Kangs. And he decided that this was wrong, and so he put an end to it. And so this is basically who you're dealing with here. So just because this Kang can be such a strong creative choice for Jonathan Majors, because you're not going to see this, this isn't going to be your main villain in the MCU. So I guess it's just very smart to make such a strong impression with a character that's only here for one episode, basically, for the time being. Get it? So anyway... So Sylvie says, so the TVA came in and fixed everything. And I love that he does this mock praying. And he's like, well, this is where we diverge from the dogma, that he created. He said, I found Eliath, correct pronunciation, I found Eliath that you guys met, and I weaponized him. I thought that was great the way he said that. I weaponized Eliath, and I ended the multiversal war. And I've created a single timeline to stop any other variants, including other Kangs from popping up. And it's been going great. I love the way he got on his desk. He's so unpredictable that it makes him really dangerous. It's funny that considering, that's funny. For a character that is so strict on what can happen, he himself is very unpredictable. Oh, that's a great choice. I really love it even more when I think of that. And he says, you're welcome. And I'm like, it's like the Johnson song from Moana. So he's like, but he says it very differently. He made it his own, which I appreciated. And he says, if you think I'm evil, and I love the delivery of the line here as well. He says, if you think I'm evil, well, just wait until you meet my variants. And I'm like, oh, is that a promise, Jonathan Majors? I can't wait. And he said, you may hate the dictator, but if, something worse is going to fill that void if you depose me, the TVA works. He said, there are two options here. So he really sets it up clearly. And he says, and Sylvie doesn't believe any of this. But Loki's really, Loki likes a deal. He always has a plan, and I think he would like to hear his options. So the two options, he said, the two options are kill me and unleash an infinite number of me, and some of us are pretty evil, or you two run the thing. And he says, I've been looking for someone to take over, and it turns out it was you two. I was like, again, very well written script. And he does that thing about how we're all villains here. But he said, now you have the chance, because Sylvie's like, you want us to ruin lives? And I love that he yelled at her to grow up. Because, of course, her life ended as a child. And so I think in some ways, she hasn't never grown up. Although Loki's done so much growing up during this episode. The series, Thor's not even going to recognize the guy. All right, so anyway, he's like, grow up. And he said, all three of us have done horrible things, but wouldn't you two like the option to do horrible things for a good cause? And that really gets to Loki, because he's like, I do feel like I'm going to continue to do maybe bad stuff because I can't help it, but it would be nice to at least be able to tell myself that I was doing it for the right reasons. So then they have this amazing moment where Immortus Kang is like, we crossed the threshold and he said, I told a bit of a fib. I don't know what's going to happen past this point. And he loves it, because for someone who for eons has known what's going to happen, suddenly he does not. And that's so cool. I love it. And then you see the timeline start to branch. And that's where you can really see that tower looking like one of those, batons. Oh, it's just great. It's just fantastic. And so Loki's like, so this is it. This is the end of time. And you're just going to let us decide what happens, even though you suddenly have a choice to make. And I like that Immortus Kang is like, yes, I'm going to do it. Because you know what? For me, there is no real choice. Because if you kill me, I'll just get back to this point. Because one of me will decide to do the very same thing. And I'll just get right back to this chair. And he says that. He calls it reincarnation. But, it's not the same memory. So I don't think technically it is. It would be like saying that even though classic Loki died, these Lokis live on. But they're totally different Lokis. So he takes off his temp pad and he's like, here you go. And he says, this is so exciting. And he says, it feels like he's all this honesty, and it feels like a fresh start. And that really gets to Sylvie. I don't know if she felt like this was an opening or if he got her emotionally, but she's like, you're going down. And Loki shockingly stops her. She's shocked. Kang is shocked. We're all shocked. And he's like, hold on a second. And I really thought this was a really great discussion, because they boiled it down to, you can't trust anyone, Sylvie, and Loki is someone that no one can trust. And I was like, oh, and she even said, we're in a pickle. And I was like, I'll say you are. Can anyone open this jar? And Kang's like, you better hurry up, because the timeline's branching. It's going to go past the point of no return. And Loki's like, this is like really serious. We can't afford to get this wrong. And she's like, and he said, you heard what he said about if we get rid of him, someone else is going to take the throne. And she's like, oh, that's it. You want a throne. It's always been about a throne to you. And he's like, that's what you think of me, huh? Like it's, hey, dating another Loki, it's difficult. Dating yourself. So they have this big fight, and they use their powers in a way that, we have not really seen Sylvie use them before. I guess they learned from each other and maybe became more powerful after the episode 5 and seeing what speaking of classic Loki, could do. So Loki's really trying to stop her. And they have a ton of great magic moments in this fight. Like, I love this one, when he materializes his sword out of nothing to block hers. And he's just pleading with her. He's like, please don't do this. And she's like, fine, kill me. You're going to have to kill me. And he can't do it. He can't hurt her. And so she pushes him back, but he actually, instead of just being blasted away, he kind of disappears. And so she goes for slow-mo. She shouldn't have slow-mo'd it. And he blocks her again. He puts himself in her way. And Kang just is like, this is incredible. What a front row seat I have. And she's like, please stop, just please stop for a moment. And he drops his own sword and he's like, I've been where you've been, and it did not work out well for me. And he's like, I don't want the throne. And I wish he would have said, I just want you, but he still can't say it because they need a season 2. So he says, I just want you to be okay. And she's just so touched. And she kisses him. And we were like, oh, yay, we got what we wanted. I can't believe it. And I don't think it was even a distraction. I think she knew what she was going to do. But she does turn him around. So, those Lokis. So I think it was business and pleasure. So she turns him around to get to the desk to get that TemPad that Kang left there. Immortus Kang. But also, I think, for a kiss goodbye. And then she says, but I'm not you. That's, a couple of times in this episode, they talk about how they want different things. And she says, but I'm not you. And, you being okay is not what I'm interested in. It's so mean. And she pushes him through. She magically blasts him through the door. And that's a great shot. It's so heartbreaking. And he's back at the TVA, right back where he started. Darn it. And she closes the door and he can't go back. And she has the TemPad, the original TemPad. TemPad version 1. And it's just her and Kang. And she pushes that desk aside, which I loved because I thought it was an odd choice during the episode to really have Kang be so obscured by the desk and his books. You couldn't really get a very good clear shot of him in some frames and at really crucial moments. Of course, Jonathan Majors was giving off so much charisma. You could still, it's still an amazing performance. But I think that's really why you felt it more when she moved the desk. And he was like, he's having a great time. He's like, oh boy, wow, I didn't see that coming. And she's like, aren't you going to beg for your life? And he's like, no, it's pointless. And speaking of pointless, I thought this was a very unsatisfying stab. In fact, I wasn't even sure she had stabbed him. And I guess it's because it's a Disney show, technically. And so, there was no gory sound when she sunk her blade in. It almost sounded like she sheathed it. And we didn't see it go in, and we didn't even see any blood trickle out of his mouth or anything. Like, we didn't see any of the classic, you've been stabbed stuff. But, that's okay, because Immortus had a great line to go out on again when he said, see you soon. And he gives her a wink. And she's like, man, that was surprisingly unfulfilling. I think I did make a mistake. I lost my boyfriend for nothing. So he's just sitting there dead. Oh, it's so great. But he's going to see us real soon, as you see in a moment. And we go past him. And I think that the window is almost like an infinity sign in some degree. It's great. And you can see the timeline branching. But it's not just branching. It's an infinite number of branches. Even the branches, it's like veins. It's like just everything. It's just out of control. And it's like to the point where it's like not even a line anymore. And that's like pretty scary. You're like, uh-oh. And look at that. The TVA monitor is like, yikes. And they're like, okay. And we still at this point think that they're, they've been woken up and they're going to get on top of this. And they're like, and they decide they're going to fight, right? They're like, we're not going anywhere. And then Loki has to decide what he wants to do. And Tom Hiddleston really sold this. Just so heartbroken. He finally had everything he wanted. And he's like, do Lokis really always lose? Like, wow. But no, he gets a look of determination on his face because what do Lokis always have? They always have a plan. So he runs off. I'm not quite sure he ran into this room. Was this supposed to be the cafeteria? Oh, the cafeteria looks like it's maybe down there. I'm not quite sure. So he's running around and he's looking and he goes to the archives and he finds Mobius. And he's so relieved, which is going to be so sad in just a moment. And so this is where they're talking, where Hunter B-15 says he just wants us to let these, the timelines branch. And they're like, there's 63 in this district alone. And you're like, oh, great, exciting. And Loki runs up and he goes, I made a horrible mistake, Mobius. We freed the timeline and these horrible evil entities are coming for us. We have to stop them. And then they discover that Mobius is like, who are you? Are you an analyst? What division are you with? Because he is kind of dressed like an analyst, and I thought that. I wonder what Loki will come up with in season 2. Will he give him another name? Will he decide to go undercover as an analyst? It's very interesting. But then he does like a real Planet of the Apes looking at the Statue of Liberty moment, where, like that great moment at the end with Charlton Heston looking up and, you find out that, nothing has gone the way you thought. So he looks up, and instead of the timekeepers, the fake timekeepers statue, this Kang ain't hiding behind again anything. And there he is again in all his comic book accurate glory. And he just looks fantastic. Oh, look at what you see how he holds himself. You see his disposition. He's going to be a great on-screen character. Just wait till you see that in live action. It looks awesome in statue form, but it's going to be even better when you see it. And then we of course get the season 2. Loki will return in season 2. Oh, I just can't wait. I hope it has even more episodes. I hope it's more than 6 episodes. I hope it runs for many seasons. It's just so good. All right, so I'm going to do those other videos to further break down what's going to happen in the MCU. I'm very curious to hear your thoughts about the episode. Share them down below. Subscribe. And of course, as always, you can check out some more videos right now.